Right now, I am on Isla Rancheria, the second largest island in Coiba National Park. In my opinion, Coiba is a hidden gem diving destination that is not known to many. I'm just about to finish up a 3-day dive trip, overnight trip with Coiba Dive Center. We left out of Santa Catalina, Panama, and this has really been some spectacular diving. I'm going to include all 9 dives we did on this trip, as well as the dive site names and commentary, so that you could potentially come here on your own time or request certain dives if you ever make it out here. And there will be timestamps throughout this video for you to navigate and see some of the highlights. Coiba National Park is located on the Pacific side of Panama. Most dive operators are taking divers from Santa Catalina to the national park. It's about an hour, hour and a half boat ride to do 2 to 3 tank dive trips or snorkel trips. A couple times a month, they do 3-day overnight trips, and you actually sleep on Bahia, an island nearby the national park. So in order to get the most out of my time here, I did the 3-day overnight trip, and it definitely didn't disappoint. The first site that we did on this trip was Wahoo Rock, and this is probably the most commonly dove site in Coiba National Park. It has the highest potential for whale sharks, and it's basically a giant rock that is protruding out of the water. It has a flag on top of it. I can't remember if it's a scuba diving flag or a Panamanian flag. I'll have to check. But you're doing like a lap around the rock. There's giant fields of plankton, which is going to attract a lot of the rays, whether these are devil rays, manta rays, or even whale sharks. Later on, you'll see some of this plankton visually out in the water column. In my experience, the Pacific is much colder than the Atlantic or Caribbean. I wore 2 wetsuits for a majority of these dives, and there were also some really nasty thermoclines. For those of you that don't know, these are basically transition layers in bodies of water where the temperature is drastically changing. So let's say at 60 feet, the water temperature could be 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and you go down 10 feet and all of a sudden you're at 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can really feel it. And the best solution in this case is just to ascend back up, unless there's something that you want to look at down there, of course. According to our dive guide, Kat, we actually got really lucky in terms of the water temperature, currents, and visibility on this trip. She's been diving this national park for over a decade, so she definitely knows what she's talking about. So if you'd like to dive with her or Coiba Dive Center when you come to Santa Catalina, I'll have that information linked in the description of this YouTube video. There is a pretty large group of devil rays. They're more closely related to a manta ray than a stingray, despite their appearance. We got the hardest working dive masters on board. What do you have to say para YouTube? Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Divemaster Austin. At the start of each dive, you can see on the right-hand side, I've included all information that my Garmin Descent Mark III dive computer dive log gives me for each dive. This is including the site names, GPS coordinates, water temperatures, and a lot more. You can pause and rewind to look at the information more closely. My next video is going to be diving the Caribbean side of Panama, and there's really a lot of differences between both coast and the diving. You'll notice here on the Pacific side, it's very rocky. The corals that you see are considered hard corals, whereas on the Caribbean side, you'll notice a lot more sandy bottoms, sea fans, and spongy soft coral. These are garden eels. They stick their heads out of their holes. I imagine they eat some plankton or different particles floating through the water. This dive site is called Faro, which means lighthouse in English. It is located on Isla Canales de Afuera. Hope I said that right. And this dive site is known for its potential to see bull sharks and oceanic blacktips. Actually didn't see any on this specific dive, but it was still pretty interesting. Lots of white tip reef sharks, turtles, and pretty large fish. Now, what I will say is I do think that the dive sites or the dives themselves on days 2 and 3 of this trip were more interesting, but I am showing this trip as it happened chronologically. I know for the YouTube algorithm, maybe it would be better if I showed some of the craziest moments towards the start of the video, but I'm not here to mislead anyone. I want to show this trip how it happened. Even this video could be considered somewhat of a highlight reel. Each dive was around 45 minutes times 9. That's over 400 minutes of content that I condensed down into 35 minutes or so. If you'd like to skip around to different dive sites with the timestamps, some of my favorites were Santa Cruz, Iglesia, Wahoo Rock Round 2, and Montaña Russo. This next dive site was called Buffett or Buffet, depends what your accent is. It's actually very close to Wahoo Rock. You can see my Garmin thought we were at Wahoo Rock using the GPS coordinates. I believe it gets the name from the buffet of fish that you see at this site. Throughout the dive, there was just tons of schooling fish. The most common shark species you'll see in this footage is a white tip reef shark. They are the smaller sharks with actually a black fin but a white point at the top of it. They're not aggressive to humans at all. There are some incidents with spear fishermen where they're going after their catch, but during the daytime, these sharks are super chill. They kind of sit in the bottom or in caves, a lot of times in groups. You'll see a lot of examples of that in this video. And they're one of the few species of sharks, similar to nurse sharks, that do not need to swim to breathe. They can pump oxygen through their gills using their cheek muscles. So that's why you see them stationary a lot of the time. We also saw a lot of different other types of sharks on these 9 dives. We saw oceanic blacktips, bull sharks, and 2 whale sharks you'll see at the end of this video. So this dive center's motto was sharks guaranteed, and they definitely didn't disappoint. If someone wants to count the total number of sharks that are seen in this video, I'd be curious to know. Now, if you guys made it this far in the video, I imagine it's because you're enjoying the content and commentary. So I have a favor to ask. If you could please subscribe to the channel and thumbs up this video. Last I checked, 94% of the people that watch my channel are not subscribed. And by doing that, you can help me do this for a living, full time, and create content just like this about different dive sites and marine parks around the world. Obviously, spearfishing is not allowed in a marine park, especially on a scuba tank. But this clip does make you wonder, if you were to shoot a spear gun through this, would you hit a collateral? How many fish would be on the end of that spear? So after Buffett, it was the final dive of the day, and we headed back to Bahia, Honda, where we spent the night and ate dinner, and here we are leaving for the next day of diving. This next dive site was called Montaña Russa, I'm not sure which one, and it was kind of like underwater canyon or valleys. I think the word our dive guide used to describe it was pinnacles, and it was definitely like the most remote dive site that we went to. There was not any massive piece of land nearby, and it was also the deepest dive that we did of 84 feet. I think you can kind of see that there's a little bit less lighting in a lot of these clips. Larger, bigger fish. You can see some barracudas circling above on top, and some jacks everywhere, amberjacks. So this was a really cool dive due to just how different it was from some of the other dives. And here you see me pointing at 2 oceanic blacktips. These sharks are much larger than the white tip reef sharks we've seen so far, and they are pretty afraid of humans. They kind of like to stay on the outskirts of your edges of vision. I kind of zoomed in the camera shot here to try and display them as best as I could, but they were definitely a little bit scared of this group of divers. So here I stumbled upon a shark slumber party. That's what I'm going to call it. I don't know what the word is for a group of white tip reef sharks, but I got pretty close to them and they didn't really seem to care until the end. After speaking with the dive center and my guide, the best time to come to Coiba National Park is going to be from December to April. This is Panama's summer and dry season, so that means better visibility, and it's also whale shark season. So here's a better shot of the schooling barracudas we saw earlier. Now barracudas, they get a bad rap, possibly because of the Finding Nemo movie where it attacks Marlin, I think his name is, but they're harmless, at least to humans. They have pretty sharp fangs or teeth that can be intimidating. I've actually ran into some of them on night dives and shined lights directly on their fangs, and that can be a little scary, but they won't do anything to you. Now, at this point in the dive, the current really started ripping. Grabbing onto rocks is not the greatest habit. If you are gonna do it, you should make sure that there's no coral nearby, and ideally wearing dive gloves so you don't tear up your hands. But that was really the only way that I could stay in one place, not getting swept away from the group, while also getting decent footage for you guys. This starfish had a chunk taken out of one of its arms. This is usually because of a lobster or a triggerfish. However, they can grow these back. They are actually pretty colorful, but because we're at such depth, some of that red color starts to fade. There's also a school of African Pompanos that approached us here. These are juveniles, you can tell because they have like strings hanging off some of their fins. As they get older, they lose these. Linked in the description of this YouTube video, you can find my scuba diving community, which in here you can connect with me and other divers around the world. You can, maybe make some diving friends. We host diving meetups as I travel around the world. We actually have the next one coming up in South Florida on March 1st. Would love to see you there if you're in the area. But if not, as I continue to make these videos and travel, I'm looking to sync with other like-minded divers, and being inside the community is the best way to make that happen. Now we're coming up on the dive site Punta Peligro, which at least from a scenery or beauty perspective, I really thought this dive site was the coolest. You can let me know what you guys think of the underwater footage, but something about the massive cliffs with the greenery on top. Pretty much immediately upon dropping down on this site, we encountered a large bull shark. It is again on the edge of vision. It was afraid of the group of divers. Maybe you'll be able to make it out if you look closely enough. Now, in order to get here, the most common way is first flying into Panama City, and from there you have a few options. I took a rental car to Santa Catalina. It's around a 5-6 hour drive. Alternatively, there are shuttles that are super cheap, I think like $11. And there's also an option to hire a charter plane. These can get pretty expensive. However, if you're in a group and split it, the cost can come down to something pretty reasonable. I want to say maybe $100, $200 per person per leg of the trip. Now, coming up, you'll see a scorpionfish that we're shining a light on. They've got some pretty impressive camouflage. They're related to lionfish. They have venomous spines, and from what I've heard, they're much stronger than a lionfish's venom. I'll put on screen what happened to my hands when I got stung by their cousin lionfish's venom. Another Finding Nemo reference here. We have a fish known as a Moorish Idol, also known as Gil from Finding Nemo, who was Nemo's mentor and the leader of the tank. Between each dive, we headed to a beach for our surface intervals. The reason why divers do this is to allow the body to expel nitrogen that is built up in their systems during dives, and you just kill some time on the beach, and in our case, we were usually served lunch or some fresh fruit. This next site was Sombrero de Pelo, which I believe means the hairy hat. Unfortunately, on this dive, my underwater casing had some moisture buildup, so you can kind of see a loop on the left side of the screen throughout this entire dive. You can still make out what's behind it, but it does affect the video quality a bit. It's a little disappointing because this really was an incredible dive, and there's nothing we can do about it now, but just wanted to explain how that happened, and I'll be avoiding that in the future. I know exactly what caused this. Similarly to Wahoo Rock, at Sombrero de Pelo, you're making a loop around the rock formation, and this site is kind of sloped, which is giving you a lot of vertical reef to look at in different depth profiles. Towards the end of this dive, you'll see a couple stingrays. They like to hang out at the bottom because that's where the thermocline starts, and they want to be in colder water. Based off of the footage that you've seen so far, I'm curious what you think about the diving in Coiba National Park, how it compares to diving at home for you, or maybe some of your favorite travel destinations. The previous video I published was in Santa Teresa, Costa Rica, which is also on the Pacific side and located pretty close to Coiba National Park. However, I thought the diving here was much better. But again, you can't really compare individual dives like that. But here the visibility was a lot better and there was more life on the reef. So far, in terms of places that I've dove around the world, I would consider Coiba top 3, maybe even top 5. Cozumel, Hawaii, Indonesia, and Thailand are definitely high up on that list as well. Whoever said turtles are slow, they got to show them this clip and see if they change their mind. Here's the stingrays that I spoke about earlier, and I don't know if you can tell from the video, but these things are huge. And in the second clip, I actually went down pretty close to one. Past the thermocline, I was really freezing to get this shot, but the things that you will do for content. Sick dive. Back on Bahia Honda, you can see some dolphins jumping out of the water. This DJI action camera is not really meant for shots like that, but hopefully you could pick them up. But we were leaving the island for the final time. This was the third day of diving, and in my opinion, these were some of the best dives of the entire trip. I wanted to include this shot of just what the scenery of the island of Bahia Honda looked like. It was really a beautiful place, not really touched by many people, and the locals there were a lot of fun to be around. So the first dive on the third and final day was Wahoo Rock for the second time. This was the first dive at the start of the video. The group, we spoke at dinner the previous night and decided that we wanted to come here again for the best chance of seeing a whale shark. So far throughout the trip, we did not see any, and it seemed like a lot of people wanted to. So we came back to the site, and we weren't disappointed. You'll see here pretty soon. I think this clip best displays the plankton I was speaking about earlier. It's that kind of haze that you see in the water. This is what attracts a lot of the filter feeder marine life, like rays and whale sharks I spoke about at the beginning of this video. So we tried to stay in this haze of plankton for a majority of the dive. I included this clip because there were some hawkfish inside of this hard coral, and when I was 12 or 13, I was in the saltwater aquarium hobby, and this was my favorite fish, so it was really cool to see it out in the wild. So here we have the highlight of probably the entire trip. We finally encountered a whale shark. It might have even been 2 whale sharks. You'll see later in this video, there's another sighting. I think this one was a little smaller than the one we saw later, but I have a lot of cuts in these segments because I keep turning my head to see where the rest of the group was, as I had to swim pretty fast to keep up with it, and I didn't want to lose the group in a low visibility environment. But this is that second whale shark I was talking about. I think this one was a little bit larger than the first. Let me know what you think in the comments. Was it 1 or 2 whale sharks? After that incredible dive, we headed to Isla Rancheria. It's where I shot the introduction to this video. It's the second largest island in the national park. We were headed here for our surface interval. Pretty nice beach if you ask me, and there's actually an alligator, or crocodile, excuse me, maybe multiple, that live on this island. We didn't encounter any of these out in the water. Go, go, go. So it's pretty hard to top a whale shark sighting while diving, but for the second dive of the day, we headed to a site called Santa Cruz, and I really like this dive, but for different reasons. Out of all the dives we did on this entire trip, this had some of the most beautiful hard corals. I felt like I was in a fish tank for a lot of the dive, the way that everything was just perfectly placed. Here, Kat is pointing to 2 scorpionfish that are inside of this coral. Again, they're super hard to see. They have great camouflage, but it's pretty rare to see 2 at the same time. I'm gonna do no commentary for the rest of this specific dive site, only because I felt so peaceful and relaxed diving it, and I want you to take in just everything and hearing the natural sounds of the environment. But for the last dive site of the trip, Iglesia, I will be back. It's a pretty impressive dive site, right? So this last site is called Iglesia. Here, Kat is pointing to a baby octopus, but it's a little bit hard to see. So that might be the largest manta I've ever seen. And if you look at the start of the clip, you can hear a banging sound. And this was actually one of the other divers banging, not the dive guide. I stared at her when I heard the banging and saw that she wasn't pointing anything, so I was confused. But then when she went ahead and pointed with her finger, that's when I turned around and saw the manta on my left. If any of you guys left your toilet here, let me know in the comments. I tried to use it, but it wasn't flushing. We are nearing the end of this very long but exciting 3-day dive trip. I'm really glad that I did it. I was actually not even supposed to be in Panama during these dates. I had a flight to Roatan, Honduras that I was denied entry for because I did not have the yellow fever vaccine. This normally is not required for Americans that are heading from America to Honduras, but because I did a layover in Panama City, which is a high-risk yellow fever country, I was denied entry to my flight. So it's kind of a funny story how I ended up here. You might even be able to say that I was meant to be here during this week. I really had a great time. There's so much logistics that goes into pulling off a dive trip like this, and I think Coiba Dive Center did a really great job. The dive guide, Kat, crushed it, and the 2 dive masters on board, they work really hard. They are helping you in and out of your gear, swapping your tanks in between each dive, doing a lot of the heavy lifting to make sure that everything runs smoothly, let alone running and driving the boat. So I give a lot of credit to Coiba Dive Center. I was not paid at all. I actually paid to go on this trip. So I just want to tell it how it is. They really did a great job here. If you do make it to Santa Catalina and you want to recreate some of the dives that we did here, reach out to Coiba Dive Center, let them know that Divemaster Austin sent you, and I hope you have as great of a diving trip as I did here.